12-year-old Jordan Hayes was practically buzzing with excitement as he clutched his boarding pass, his fingers running over the embossed letters as if to make sure they were real. He had dreamed about this moment for weeks, watching travel vlogs, memorizing flight paths, and reading everything he could about the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. And now, it was finally happening. His mother, Camille, walked beside him, her expression amused as she watched her son's wide eyes take in the bustling terminal of Dallas Fort Worth International Airport. "You're gonna wear yourself out before we even get on the plane," she teased, nudging him playfully. Jordan barely heard her. He was too focused on the sight ahead. The massive plane waiting at the gate, its pristine white fuselage gleaming under the terminal lights. It was even bigger than he had imagined. This was already special, but what made it even more exciting? For the first time in his life, he wasn't flying in economy. His father, Malcolm Hayes, had arranged first-class tickets for him and his mom as a treat for Jordan's birthday. Jordan couldn't contain his grin as they moved toward the priority boarding lane. The feeling of skipping the long lines made him feel important, like one of those business travelers in fancy suits. A flight attendant stood at the entrance, scanning tickets with a polished smile. Jordan practically bounced on his heels when it was his turn, handing over his pass with the excitement of a kid unwrapping a gift on Christmas morning. The scanner beeped. The attendant glanced at the ticket, then at Jordan. "Welcome aboard," she said. Handing it back, he took it with both hands, as if it were a golden ticket to a world he had only dreamed of. But just as he stepped onto the plane, something changed. The moment Jordan entered the first-class cabin, his breath caught. The seats were wide and luxurious, arranged in a sleek, spacious layout. Everything looked pristine. Leather recliners, personal screens, soft blankets neatly folded on each seat. The air smelled of fresh linen and citrus. Nothing like the cramped rows of economy he was used to. He checked his ticket again. 4A, right near the window. Perfect, and as he reached his seat, a voice stopped him. "Excuse me, young man." Jordan turned to see a flight attendant in a crisp, navy blue uniform standing in front of him. She had the same polite smile as the one at the gate, but something about her expression made his stomach tighten. "This section is for first-class passengers only," she said. For a second, Jordan thought she was joking. Maybe she had mistaken him for a kid who had wandered in from economy. He smiled and held up his ticket. "I am in first class," he said confidently. The attendant's eyes flicked to the ticket, then back to him. Her smile thinned. "Where did you get this ticket?" Jordan blinked. "My dad got it for me. It's my seat." Her lips pressed together. Instead of stepping aside, she turned her head toward the galley. "One moment," she murmured, motioning for another crew member. Jordan's excitement started to fade, replaced by something heavier. A businessman in the next row glanced up from his laptop. A woman with a glass of champagne lowered her flute slightly. He could feel the weight of their stares. Jordan's mother had gone to the restroom before boarding. He swallowed, suddenly wishing she were here. The second flight attendant, an older man with silver at his temples, approached and took the ticket from the woman's hand. He scanned it, his expression unreadable. "Let me check with the front desk," he said. "Just stay here." Jordan shifted uncomfortably as the first flight attendant remained standing in front of him, blocking his path. Passengers continued to board, maneuvering around him as if he were an obstacle. The businessman with the laptop stole another glance, his brows furrowed. A woman in a cream blazer let out a soft sigh and turned away, shaking her head. Jordan's ears burned. What had he done wrong? Then, his mother's voice cut through the tension. "What's going on here?" Camille approached, her heels clicking sharply against the carpeted aisle. Her eyes flicked from the flight attendant to her son, instantly sensing that something wasn't right. "Ma'am, we're just verifying your son's seat assignment." "There seems to be a mix-up," the attendant said with a tight smile. Camille didn't blink. "A mix-up?" Jordan silently handed her his ticket. She barely glanced at it before speaking. This isn't a mix-up. My son is in seat 4A. The older flight attendant returned, still holding the ticket. We weren't able to find an issue with the booking, he admitted, but there was hesitation in his voice. Jordan felt a rush of relief. See? It was fine. But the first flight attendant still wasn't convinced. Maybe the system made a mistake, she suggested. Could it be an upgrade that wasn't processed correctly? Camille's brows raised. An upgrade? She inhaled sharply. If there was an issue, why wasn't it brought up at the gate? His ticket was scanned just like everyone else's. The flight attendant hesitated. Around them, murmurs filled the cabin. Jordan could feel people watching. His mother's voice softened as she turned to him. "Sit down, baby." Jordan slid into his seat. For a moment, it seemed like the ordeal was over. But then, the businessman across the aisle shifted in his seat. "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding," he said lightly. "You know, they have to be careful about security these days." Jordan's stomach twisted. His mother turned slowly to the man, her expression unreadable. Then, she smiled, a polite, dangerous smile. "Oh, I see," she said smoothly. "And what exactly are they securing my son from?" The businessman's mouth opened, then closed. He looked away. Jordan exhaled, but something told him this wasn't over. He was right. A supervisor arrived, tablet in hand, face strained. She scanned the ticket once more. The screen blinked green. "There's no issue," she admitted. Camille's voice was like silk wrapped around steel. "Of course there isn't." A long silence stretched in the cabin. Then, the supervisor spoke again. "We apologize for the inconvenience." Camille's smile didn't waver. "An inconvenience?" She leaned in. "Tell me, how often do you double-check first-class tickets for 12-year-old boys?" The supervisor stiffened. Before she could answer, another voice interrupted. "What seems to be the issue here?" Jordan's heart pounded. His father had arrived. Malcolm Hayes was a man who didn't need to raise his voice to command attention. Dressed in a sharp navy suit, his presence alone shifted the atmosphere. The supervisor straightened, flustered. "Sir, this was just a misunderstanding." "Save it," Malcolm said smoothly, reaching into his jacket. "I just got off a call with the regional manager for this airline." He slid his phone into his pocket. "She'll be very interested in hearing how my son and wife were treated today." The supervisor paled. Seeing as I own the airline," Malcolm added casually. A stunned silence filled the cabin. Passengers exchanged wide-eyed glances. The businessman across the aisle cleared his throat and suddenly found his laptop very interesting. Malcolm adjusted his cuff. "We'll be having a conversation about this after the flight." The attendant scurried away. Camille smirked. "You okay, baby?" Jordan nodded, exhaling. His father placed a hand on his shoulder. "Son," he said, "power is knowing who you are and never letting them make you question it." Jordan smiled. He knew exactly who he was, and no one could take that away from him.